It's November 2023, another month, another Reddit r/OverwatchUniversity top questions of the month answering with KarQ. Overwatch support, here we go. Most upvoted question of 2023 November, attacking on Escort maps, : why go straight to the cart? This question applies to all the Escort maps, but especially Dorado, Watchpoint Gibraltar, and Shambali Monastery. I would guess that 99% of defending teams are going to have some or all of their team on high ground at the start of these maps. We all know this, and we all still walk out the front door and feed right into them. What if we instead use the other spawn exits? We could take the side path to the high ground, get the enemy out of there, and then go get the payload. That could work, right? I don't mean to sound sarcastic about this, but I'm just baffled. I've been playing this game for 2 years, and I've never once seen a team prioritize clearing high ground over dying on the cart. Am I missing something? You're actually right. Simply put, there's a lot of people who just kind of turn their brains off and think they must go to the objective right away at the beginning of the game. I will say that starts to dissipate a little bit as you climb up in the ranks, but even so, even in the GM1 ranks that I normally play at, people still go to the cart right away, but it's usually one person, usually the support, and I'm not gonna lie, it's usually me, but you are supposed to clear high ground. Map control is better than sending multiple people to the objective. If you're on the cart, you're usually in open sight lines, and you want to have many of your other teammates at least do their best to attempt to outpoke them, snipe them, or if you're like dive or brawl, if you're if you're brawl, you're supposed to speed together, move as a clump, ignore the objective, and try to clear off the high ground before you can make progress. Now that being said, you can send one person onto the cart. When I said it's support, it's usually me, because I mostly play Baptiste and KarQ right now, not so much Ana lately. Baptiste is good to be the solo cart pusher because he's pretty self-sufficient. The cart heals you 10 HP per second, you have a regen burst, and you have a lamp for yourself, and you have the jump. On some maps, I can jump up and help my team right away when the other 4 teammates are going to clear the high ground. If I'm KarQ, I can move the cart a little bit and then TP right in to help them engage in a 5v5 in the distance. When you're that one person on the cart like me, you're applying a bit of objective pressure. Sometimes when you get some free objective push, it actually forces somebody on the that's holding the defensive position to drop from high ground or to move away and contest you a little bit, and that can create space in that way. But definitely don't send all 5 on the payload. That's actually like not the correct play at all. So you're not like wrong for saying that you feel like it applies in a lot of games. Simply put, a lot of players don't know that, so you need to spread the word and be like, hey, I want us to do this right at the beginning of the game, and some people hopefully will click and move together, and you guys can do the job properly as attack, or make the game easier for yourselves. But yeah, definitely don't need to prioritize the objective. Prioritize clearing the enemies before you get free attacks on Escort maps. Okay, the second question, top question of the month, was why would you pick Cassidy over Soldier or Bastion? Cass has a higher burst damage, but Soldier and Bastion just seem that they can do what he does, but better, and then some. Both Soldier and Bastion can brawl and poke, but Soldier has movement and sustain, and Bastion is tankier and has better range. I know Cass is better at countering some heroes, but what would make you pick Cass at the start of a match before seeing who you are playing against? Some people are actually just, Cass mains, so they'll play him no matter what. But you're right, Cassidy does have higher burst damage than the Soldier and Bastion that you mentioned, but each hero has their strengths and their identities. Bastion does poke a little bit better, and he's a lot stronger, especially with his artillery, but he's like on and off. He's kind of a bit weaker in recon mode and a lot stronger in the sentry form, and there's like a window of opportunity to punish him. Plus, Bastion's hitbox is really big, so he's vulnerable in that capacity, although it doesn't seem to matter in a lot of ranks until you get to the high ranks, where actually if you stand out in the open as Bastion, he's actually easier to kill. Despite his 300 HP and Ironclad passive, because his hitbox is so big, if I'm a Baptiste, I'm not missing a single shot on him, even if he strafes. But if he does get some resources and he's not in the vulnerable position, he is hard to kill, don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying, in general, a hitbox is something to consider. Soldier, of course, can poke, he's very fast, he is self-sustained, and he's a little bit of a pepper hero. But Cassidy, you mentioned why you would pick him over these two, right? Well, Cassidy's identity right now as it stands is a closer range, more brawly hit scan. They decreased the fall off range distance before your damage starts falling off, which means if you shoot people from long distances, your gun damage scales down a lot. In any case, you do very little damage at long ranges, so it actually makes Cass not very good against Echo, Pharah, or Pharah Mercies if they play their distances right, and very long range maps. The times that I would personally pick Cassidy over Sojourn and Bastion, as you mentioned, is close range brawly stuff. So a lot of control points, and to play specifically to counter very specific heroes that have to get close to you, because again, you're 225 HP, you're tankier. Doomfist and Ball are probably your best tank matchups as a Cassidy player, because that Hinder Grenade can stop those two who are very movement centric to get around. Those two tanks completely rely on their movement abilities to create space and be effective, and the Hinder Grenade can stop it completely. And if they're up close, the Fan the Hammer up close does do a lot on Ball. It's actually a better option to Fan the Hammer at Ball up close, because all of the bullets hit. You can't headshot them anyways. Doom kind of depends on the situation. A lot of times, if you're not actually a hardcore Cass main, it is actually, I would say, better to start as Soldier. If you're just a hit scan player and you want to pick between Cass, Soldier, or Bastion, if we're not including Ashe because you didn't mention it in here, I mean, I think Ashe is pretty safe. Soldier is pretty safe. Bastion is safe if you have resources, but Soldier and Ashe for sure are the safest raw hit scan heroes. Next question. Reinhardt feels like a horrible character, at least on paper. So how does he consistently get high win rate with what seems like every single season? I never understood how this happens. I'm still under the impression that Rein is a really bad tank. It can be counterplayed very easily. A lot of characters completely deny him. His kit generally has a lot to be desired, and he just does not work on a lot of maps. So why does he still get really good win rates so much? It's honestly baffling. Number one, Rein is also one of those tanks that is, I think a top Reddit comment said it too. He's just a very intuitive tank to play. At most ranks, you hold a shield, and if people like don't know their spacing correctly, in most average ranks, they just get clobbered with 3 hammer swings and they die. So he's already effective by simply existing. I feel like Rein has this thing where he's really good at like the low ranks for those reasons. Then he kind of dips a bit. Then he goes up a little bit, actually, believe it or not, in GM, because the top players know when to play him. Unless they're a hardcore Rein one-trick, then we throw that all out the window. The good Rein one-tricks know when to play him, because when he's strong, he's really strong when he's, number one, enabled with the right composition, and number two, it's on a good brawl map. So there are a decent number of good brawl maps or brawl points. The thing is, Rein is really good where he's good, but then when he's not the ideal pick, it can feel terrible. If they're playing 3 or 4 things that counter you or make your general effectiveness really hard it makes it really hard for you to be effective, that's when it can feel terrible. High rank players know how to like space you out. You can literally just sit there like a duck and just feel like you're doing nothing for most of the game. And that's what tends to happen. If you force Rein when he's just not optimal at all, it's like a very harsh scale on how bad he can feel. So I feel like his win rate is due to the result of players understanding that they're not going to pick him when he's not good, right? Where people are forced to play close range, the skybox isn't that high, and you have a Lucio on your team. If you play it in the right situations, you can cheese and completely just like boost the win rate pretty high. And then the low ranks, it's high for just natural reasons, for intuitiveness and big shield, big hammer, do damage. How is Lucio useful? Like, I don't understand how he mainly speeds the tank and dives vulnerable people, but what does the tank do with speed boost exactly? Say you have a Ramatra mirror, and they're brawling. Your tank wouldn't really be taking space unless he is very obviously winning the brawl. So if they're both being fully healed and 1v1ing, isn't Lucio kind of useless, or should he switch up the playstyle, and how? I've been playing since Overwatch 1 and I still don't understand. From the top, how is Lucio useful? Obviously, speed boost, like you mentioned, is a very strong engage tool and disengage tool. I am of a firm belief, and I say this on all my tier lists, that Lucio is not that effective in the lower ranks because tanks and your team don't utilize your speed optimally at all, right? Speed is very powerful when used together correctly, which is why Lucio's picked a lot in the Overwatch League and high level play. But in low level play, speed itself is kind of not great there for those reasons. If people are not on the same page, they're not engaging or disengaging with your speed boost, and also assuming that you are amping your speed at the correct times or at an optimal time. Like, are people capitalizing it? If you see them coming in, are you as a team disengaging with a correctly timed amp speed boost? If you see someone caught out, do you recognize that and speed your team in? Someone who needs the range, or like a Ramatra or like a Reinhardt to get in range to swing at them, are you doing it at the right time? So because that ability is inherently weaker there, there, it's not as effective there. But that's what the tank with the speed boost needs to do. You said, what does the tank do with the speed boost? It really is to just close the gap to engage or help them disengage. And that's why speed and Lucio is mostly played with tanks that are not don't have great natural mobility, which is why you normally typically don't see Lucio played at all with very vertical and very mobile tanks like Wrecking Ball or Doomfist. They don't really need to use the speed at all, so that's why he's not picked there. But that's what the tank does with the speed boost exactly. I think in your question you said if they have a ram mirror and they're brawling, blah, 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 is he useless? At that point, you just amp heals, or your priority is to help disengage your tank if like it seems like they're not in a strict 1v1. There's not very many times your tanks are in a strict 1v1 for an extended period of time. Usually like another teammate of theirs will come help you shoot the tank. Overwatch is a very team-centric game, so if you see that, you know how to disengage them, or if you think they're about to convert a kill, you amp the heals really quickly, and if they start retreating, you switch to speed to help them out. That's how you utilize your role as Lucio there. Why does Soldier have double the pick rate of Sojourn and GM? Really? I didn't even know that. At least on paper, and to my understanding, Sojourn should be the better option at higher level, right? I suck at Sojourn compared to Soldier myself, but proof, overbuff, blah, blah, blah. But even a crappy Sojourn player like me finds that Sojourn can deal a lot with a lot of BS that Soldier can't. For example, if the other team has any sort of dive like snipers and Hanzo or Widowmaker, you'll suffer on Soldier where you can flat out duel them on Sojourn. Sojourn has the bursty damage to punch through the inflated healing and cooldowns and secure pick. Maybe my understanding is flawed and I'm missing something. Any insight anyone has, regardless of rank, would be interesting to read. Okay, I think there's two parts to this. Number one, Soldier is like a legacy hero, 7 years. People are going to be naturally more comfortable in the hero. He is always hit scan. Sojourn is projectile until the burst rail. And Soldier does have like positioning superiority in a sense where he can consistently maneuver around and take different positions on the high ground. Whereas Sojourn, you have to play a little pokey until you have the threat of rail and you don't have the sprint. You have to save your slide for when you're getting jumped in a lot of cases. There's different pros and cons of the heroes, but I did not even realize it has double the pick rate of Sojourn and GM. That's actually a little crazy. I can assume it's probably comfort, like I said earlier, but Sojourn is very good. I would say Sojourn is one of the more popular DPSs I personally see. In GM1 lobbies, GM1, GM2 average lobbies that I usually run into, I tend to see them equally, I would say. So hard to say. I don't really know an exact answer other than comfort, and just depends on the situation. I think Sojourn is stronger on certain tanks that you can farm the rail off of, like all the new Roadhogs running around with the rework. Oh my god, it's you have to play Sojourn over Soldier, but Soldier is a little better at maneuvering around shields and poking and bursting randomly with a little bit of the Helix rocket. A bit more consistent peppering down. But yeah, no, both are great heroes though. Why do people on the top of the ladder play Sigma mostly? What makes them good compared to other tanks? If you look at the top leaderboards for tank, at least in NA, top 10 seems to play primarily Sigma. Yeah, what makes him good? Sigma seems weak to rush, and while he can't kite back, he usually doesn't even have to step on point so that people can just brawl onto him. I know I'm pretty bad at the game. Basically, Sigma he's weak to rush if rush can get onto him, but your job as a Sigma is to poke them out and make them take so much damage by the time they get to you. So you have to space it correctly with the right team around it, and with the right team, it's mostly just Baptiste. Baptiste synergizes the best with Sigma. It is the core pick, and every other role can be flexed a little bit, but generally speaking, most teams are playing poke version of Sigma, and then he's just very strong. He does a lot of damage, doesn't have to reload, and he's got a lot of mitigation. That shield of his that's flexible on like a 1 or 2 second cooldown to flash up, flash down is the most consistent shield besides Reinhardt, and Sigma can put a shield anywhere, like you can keep pushing it forward, retract it, put it back, and he's got long range poke, and he's resistant to a lot of projectiles because of his suck. You can eat some ultimates. He's just a very well-rounded character in conjunction with the meta support, which is Baptiste. He's been the least resistant to nerfs, I believe. I don't think they've really touched him at all, while other tanks have had ups and downs, and all the other supports have been tuned a little bit. Back when it was like KarQ was OP, we saw like KarQ, Lucio, with Winston, or even KarQ Mercy because Sojourn was busted. It really just depends on other strengths. So if we want to talk about the most well-rounded tank, it really is Sigma right now. Why do high elo players defend back? I'm a high plat Mercy main, so generally I'm playing further back away anyways, but lower rank players tend to set up defense right in front of the enemy spawn, like the high ground opposite of the Dorado spawn, Icon Wall Bridge, but most if not all high GM players, Ellie Zhao, Flat Emo, I've seen have played further back towards the point or just behind the choke point. I just feel like, especially for payload maps, this gives the enemy unnecessary space, but it's definitely different in high ranks and help blah, blah, blah. See if I can help my own gameplay. Okay. Defensive positions are generally in a spot where you have the best vision or control of a certain choke point, which gives you the most advantageous advantage. So the maps you mentioned, the opposite of the enemy Dorado spawn, like that high ground is actually held a little bit for a little bit of poke, but then teams will default to the other side of the Dorado high ground because that's the strong position. That's a little further back. It does give the attackers generally around the first corner, but that's about it. Because when they round that first corner, they can get attacked by all angles, and that initial spot on Dorado spawn can be retaken and as a strong angle, but it can be attacked as well, which is why they usually have 1 or 2 people there to control that space. To TLDR it, you defend further back depending on the map, depending on where the choke point is. You said you see people like go up into their spawn. There are actually some cases where going into their spawn works, like Havana defense. Some people have realized if you're all on the same page, you can spawn hold them on Havana first, because even if you lose, which will eventually happen unless you just completely roll them and hold them all the way through, the first like corner where it becomes hard to push is that like when you make it up that first hill in Havana before the payload turns, because that's where the defenders have that high ground and they can like have that stronger position to mess your attack up. You have enough time to regroup and retake another fight there, and even a third fight before the payloads even cap. So you can make it a 3-fight area rather than a 2-fight, if that makes any sense. Sigma's Rock Exception. Why is Sigma's Rock an exception where it can't be reflected or eaten? Things like Genji's Deflect, Javelin Spin, or Defense Matrix. There are other CC abilities that are projectiles and they can be eaten or deflected. Like, are you telling me a Genji can deflect a damn black hole, like Zarya's ult, but can't deflect a rock back? There are also far more powerful things that can be eaten, like Mei's ult, Illari's ult, Cassidy's ult, but a Peace Rock? Damn, that's too much to handle, I guess. So it's definitely, to answer your question, it's definitely not like a realism thing, if that makes sense. Like, yeah, Sigma should be, or what's it called? Like, we can't deflect a rock, but we can deflect a black hole. It's definitely not like a fiction or fantasy thing. It's more for a balance thing. Sigma's rock is a very slow wind-up projectile, and I guess for balance reasons, to balance Sigma, they made it so nobody can deflect it. A D.Va player that can instantly flash your matrix and seeing a slow rock windup basically renders that ability useless. Now, there's probably somebody here who can list like another ability that has a slow windup that can get eaten, but maybe not on a cooldown. Like Zenyatta's secondary fire, you can, but then he can just do it again. Rock is on a pretty decent cooldown, so it's a slow windup. So I feel like it's fine that it's not being that you can't deflect it or eat it. How can I convince my silver 4 DPS that he isn't holding the rest of the team back? I've been playing comp with my best friend and his girlfriend, and me and his girlfriend are high gold while he is low silver. He believes he is holding us back from hitting plat. Anyone else ran into a similar situation? He does play DPS well, and if anything, we're holding him in silver. I don't want to stop playing with him because he thinks he's holding us back. Does anything else run into a similar problem with their friend? Maybe this isn't the best place to ask a question, but like, I don't want to stop playing with my friend in comp and I'm getting desperate. Wow, not a gameplay related question here for the top question of the month. This is kind of cute, but realistically, you just gotta talk to him. He may feel bad, but you just have to reassure him that it really doesn't matter, and you guys are just, you don't want to stop playing with him. You literally said it. You just want to play to have fun, and that's okay. A lot of people should play video games to have fun. Are you trying to go pro? Are you trying to make money off the game by going to the Pro Overwatch League, which is now dead, by the way? No. So what are you playing for? You're playing to have fun. Just check. As long as he's having fun, just reassure him that you guys are you're there to play with him and his girlfriend just to have fun, and that's it, man. Communication, baby. Communication. If you played the It Takes Two, I remember he says that, the little book. What are some common beginner mistakes that you see in the game specifically as it relates to character versus character interactions? I had the other day where someone was playing Mauga and I was playing Sigma, and they kept blasting at my kinetic grass, giving me tons of overhealth. I told them how it worked, and in later fights, they stopped shooting when they saw it. And made me think about what other common beginner mistakes there are, because I remember doing the same thing, blah, blah, blah. Another one might be using kinetic grasp against Zarya, or forgetting to use Matrix to absorb more risk healing or damaging orbs. This is where my one tip for every hero series was perfect, because it's mostly just character versus character interactions. Number one, common beginner mistakes that people still do, even in high ranks, is shooting the empowered Doomfist, or shooting the Doom when he's blocking. For the love of God, if you can help it and you're not already mid-animation, Stop shooting the Doomfist for his power block. It gives him the empowered punch, which is super strong. And number 2, it actually resets his punch cooldown, by the way. If you give him empower, it resets the cooldown on his punch, so he can punch again really quickly. If you fail to do that, he's gonna finish his block, and his punch is still on like a few more seconds before it comes up. Now, another one is the Zarya bubble. That one actually has more nuance to it, because some people will say, stop shooting the Zarya bubble, but at the same time, if you're all on the same page, you can burst through the bubble and actually punish her. Because a lot of Zaryas will put themselves out of position to bubble aggressively to gather energy. But if she's not expecting her bubble to be popped, which takes 200 damage, by the way, or it used to be 225, it's back at 200. Yeah, it's 200 damage. She can be like, oh shit, they popped my bubble really fast. Now I'm in a bad spot, and she can get punished for that. Beams against like matrices, like Sigma, or Sigma Suck or Diva Suck. All beams can go through it, like Symmetra Beam, Zarya Beam. Knockbacks, it's not really a beginner mistake, but knockbacks can be accentuated a little bit. They nerfed it a lot at some point in Overwatch 1, but DI, directional input. If you know a boop is coming, you can also move your character in the same direction you're getting booped to accentuate the boop or offset it just a little bit. If Winston leaps in on you and he's about to land in front of you, but you jump and you hold S or you hold down to move away to create some space, his leap boop plus you jumping back at the same time can accentuate it a little bit. Does that make sense? And let's think of one more final interaction for the people. Oh, people cutting off line of sight. Beginner. This I just stole this one from one of the posters, but this one's true. You know, another common one is people getting out of line of sight of your supports and expecting them to follow every time. I think that should be made very clear that you're out of line of sight, whether that's through communication or not. Like if you jump in as Winston, you die, you can't be like, where are my heals? But I'm like, dude, you're literally across 4 walls and, you know, 6 blocks. Like, what am I supposed to do? As a support player, depending on how bad they're feeding, like, are they really going into 1v5 and feed? Then you don't follow them. If they're kind of taking space, you should sort of put yourself in a spot where you still have line of sight of them, depending on multiple factors, but that's the general gist of it. I think that's it for the top questions. This one was a bit of a longer episode, but hopefully I answered some of the good ones and you learned a little bit. See you next month. Bye.